Parents of Reddit, what is most fucked up secret you are hiding from your children? I am the child, but my dad waited till I am grown up to tell me that my mom gave me a lot of sleeping pills when I was a little child so she could leave me alone at home to maintain her relationship with her lover while my dad was working in another country. That cleared up many things. Edit. Thanks for everyone wishing me well. I really appreciate that I am doing well and it doesn't affected me. Beside that, I don't remember much about my childhood, but I didn't suffer or whatever. Meanwhile, I am dealing with depression and anxiety since a few years, but I am not sure if this links to the drugging. But meanwhile, I am pretty good at being depressed, to be honest, haha. Otherwise, is my life really good? I want to clear up that I am in okay terms with my mom. She learned from her mistakes and I forgave her. I just don't forgive her that she did my dad so dirty. My dad is the greatest person I've ever known and he deserves to be happy. Not mine, but my sister's oldest doesn't know that her younger sister, whom she loved with all her heart, was kidnapped, raped and then shot in the head. She believes that the younger one died in a car accident. That's pretty effed up according to me. That we weren't actually visiting daddy at his work, it's a secure psychiatric ward where he's been since she was 3 months old. That we are divorced. Years before they came along, spouse and I decided it wasn't working out and got divorced. Years later, things still weren't working out fantastically for both of us, so we got back together. Never did get around to getting remarried though. My parents told me my sister is adopted. They didn't tell her. She's 34. BTW help, what do I do? That I don't actually enjoy watching Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. My 2-year-old would be devastated because that's our show. My daughter knows that her grandparents are getting a divorce. She doesn't know that it's because grandpa, 72, decided to knock up a 24-year-old. We will talk about it once she's older, but I don't want to normalize that relationship for a predolescent. Edit. This is my father-in-law. He's definitely not rich, in fairly impressive shape for a dude pulling social security, and I'm happily ignorant as to the status of his erections. It's a small town story with a fucked up single mom and a old man that hasn't experienced much emotional growth since being drafted for service in Vietnam. These people would never end up together if they were emotionally healthy and didn't have control issues. I'm definitely going to do my best to explain to my daughter, but she's 9 and emotionally overwhelmed by the very idea of the divorce. When she comes to me to talk about it, having processed the idea, then I will explain the situation more fully. My husband has already told his dad that our family and his new family won't be getting together for a barbecue anytime in the foreseeable future. Edit 2. A lot of you dudes are assuming a lot about 23. I would remind you that we are talking about small town, single mama, daddy issues, rural deep south, grandpa fucking 23. Y'all are a bunch of optimists. I'm not the parent, I'm the child, but my family kept it a secret that my brother was a child molester and that my grandpa had raped my mother and threatened to kill us grandkids. I found out because I told my sister that my brother had molested me and she told me about the rest. We were raised having a relationship with them like they were normal human beings. It's absolutely disgusting that I got all these bedtime facts from Reddit. That we don't go to bed the same time as they do. Not really fucked up, but still a big secret. I've been living 5.5 hours away from my wife and daughter for the past 11 months. Every time I talk to my daughter she asks, when am I coming home? Well, little does she know that next Friday, when her and her mom come for what she thinks is just a weekend visit, they are actually coming to pick me up for good. Thanks everyone for all the kind words. To clarify a few things. My move was medically related. I got shot when I was 13 and this is in no way related to that. I'm a social worker by trade, but have not worked in the field these past 11 months due to my situation. I actually did an AMA about it a few years ago. My wife and I did get divorced, and yes, we did co-parent. However, recently we have decided that the truth is we should have worked harder on being together and are giving it another go. I call her my wife because I never really stopped thinking of her that way. I mentioned being shot because people were checking my post history and seeing that I had been shot, but not that it was when I was 13. People were wondering if that is why I had been away. I want to thank everyone for the incredible show of support and compassion. For all of the kind words. I would especially like to thank those who shared their personal stories of similar circumstances. Thank you for the gold and everything else. Honestly, I'm unable to properly express how your words brightened my day and will continue to provide encouragement. I promise you all that I will post an update. I never actually took his nose, it stayed on his face the whole time. In fact, it has never once left his face, even though I have told him that I took it countless times. I even showed him the tip of my thumb as evidence of the theft. Sorry you had to read that, but it feels really good to come clean. Edit. Thanks for all the responses. You some. I will tell him the truth eventually, but have to make sure mom is on board too. For those of you condemning me, your words weigh heavy. But honesty, much like a fire at the circus, is intense. My son's older half-sister molested him and that's why we don't see them anymore. Waiting until we can get into a psych for support before we break it to him. Edit. He was 3 when it happened, so was able to tell us, quite graphically, what was happening. The sister also admitted it and said she did it because it was funny and she liked to hurt him. DCP, Child Protective Services, became involved and investigated both families, but couldn't find anything suspicious. We are telling him because we very strongly believe it is the right thing to do. We don't know what/how much he remembers and would much prefer to give him the coping skills now instead of possibly letting him disintegrate into a non-functioning adult with massive problems. Thank you so much for all the support. It is a horrible thing to deal with, but we are going to do everything in our power to love and support him. I'm so sorry that so many of you had to go through similar situations. I'm proud of every one of you for surviving and fighting. That she can't have a relationship with her grandfather because he's a pedophile and I would never trust him. The rest of my family maintains a relationship with him and leans on me hard to open up communication because family comes first. They are absolutely right. My family does come first, which is why my daughter won't ever have to have a relationship with him. Edit. He has molested/raped multiple members of my family and I only found out when I was pregnant with my daughter. Without going into too much detail, he also has a mental illness and I've been told that I need to let him have a relationship with my daughter because he's sick and couldn't help it. I don't have kids, but here's a family secret. My mom and I left the straightener on for 2 days while we took a family trip to Canada. It doesn't have an automatic off. We haven't told my dad. Edit. The house is fine. The counter was just really hot. This was like 2 years ago. New throwaway for this one. That my adopted daughter was conceived as a result of a gang rape. Experts say you are supposed to give your adopted children all of their history when they are old enough, but honestly if it were me, I would just rather not know. We are considering not ever telling her. It weighs heavy on our hearts. Edit. She's 15, almost 16. Edit 2. She knows she is adopted and is even in contact with her birth mother. But her birth mother does not think she should know this history either. The compelling argument to tell her is this: it is not our right to decide if she knows her history. It's her history and her right to know both good and bad. Edit 3. Several people have asked about my username. I was changing my newly adopted daughter's 6 weeks old diaper and not yet used to the unpleasantness of doing so, gagging and just trying to get through it. I'd been through this several times before and though it was just my body making a threat, but would not follow through. Just as I'm trying to finish the cleanup, a nice little liquid squirt was unleashed right onto my arm, and it pushed me over the edge. Not wanting to vomit on my kid, I turned my head to the side and puked towards the floor. Of course one hand was holding 2 little legs, the other hand holding the wipes, so I could not try catching it. Guess who was standing down there milling about? Mr. Meow, that's who. This happened soon after we adopted the daughter this thread is about, and I just thought of that when I was trying to think of a username. I'm the child, but my grandma was so mad at my mom dating young and getting pregnant that she lost her first 2 pregnancies because my grandma made her brothers beat my mom until she had miscarriages. It hurts my heart. Edit. I know some people were curious for details, so here ya go. My grandma's brothers. My mom was an only child. It was communist Albania at the time. My grandma is lovely now, and it's a shame that she was abusive to my mom during her adolescence. My mom, I believe, suffers from some form of bipolar disorder or PTSD and result from the abuse, and subsequently abused my brothers and I. It was like walking on eggshells my whole childhood. Anything I did wrong ended up with me being hit. One of my brothers was the worst to me, would choke me out for making him lag on Call of Duty, and my mom and dad were working all day to support us and never really intervened. Even when they noticed me self-harming and depressed, I got punished and beat because my life in comparison was nothing to complain about. It took me a year in therapy to come to terms with I shouldn't devalue my pain because my parents have been through worse. After some time, healing, and forgiving, we are all okay with one another. I avoid my brother a bunch still. My anxieties/PTSD became a little too much for me to handle after living with them for 20 years, so I moved across the country. Despite all the bullshit my family has been through, time really did heal most wounds, and we all do love each other. There's more respect now than there's ever been. My mom has her first at 16, then 18, and me at 21. She understandably feels like she lost most of her childhood being abused and then raising kids. Also, stop telling me to hurt my grandma. I understand my mom's story is painful, but they're a healthy relationship. They love each other. My mom is supporting my grandma financially, and that happened about 30 years ago. My grandma was an amazing guardian to me and often saved me from my mom/brother's abuse.